So today I'm speaking with Elena, an award-winning midwife and pregnancy and postnatal fitness coach. I'm super excited to hear everything you've got to say. We're going to explore things in this conversation about how women can feel strong and in control of their bodies, hopefully, and especially in pregnancies where things feel a bit more medicalized, maybe labeled as high risk. That would be really good to get into because so many women that I work with aren't lacking information really. They're lacking that sense of, trust, connection, confidence in their body. So I am super excited to explore how movement and physical awareness can actually help that. Maybe you would like to share a little bit about yourself and the amazing work that you do, and then we'll get into some questions.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me, Abby. I'm
Um,
really excited about this. It's a wonderful conversation to have, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm Elena, and I work in the southeast of England in East Sussex. I have been a midwife for 11 years. I trained in Italy, and then as soon as I qualified, I came straight to the UK because there is a much stronger culture for supporting physiological birth and supporting women's rights and wishes and plans, and that's my vibe. In Italy, we've got some work to do around those topics. So I knew I wanted to work somewhere where I could be the best midwife I could be. And so, yeah, came straight here to the UK in 2015. I worked in the NHS primarily as a continuity home birth midwife, but did hospital too. And as a continuity midwife, I stuck with my families and the women I cared for, whatever the journey was. So if they wanted to stay at home, I was supporting their home birth. But if they wanted to birth in hospital or complications arose at the end of pregnancy, then I would go to the hospital with them and support them to have the best experience there. So that was my job
yeah.
for about 7 years. In 2022, I left the NHS and I started my own private practice. Um, while I was doing all of these things, feeling a bit burned out, the midwife NHS life, I started going to the gym. And I found I was 35 when I walked into the gym the first time. Like this is not a long life passion of mine, but I became really passionate about it. Like I just loved it. I got hooked. So I started training all the time, and the benefits of it were incredible for my mental health, for my confidence, for the connection with my body, my potential. Like it just changed everything. So this passion grew alongside my work. And because I was at the gym a lot, I had a lot of friends at the gym who would become pregnant and then would come to me and ask questions about training. What do I modify? How do I continue? Is it safe for me to do this now that I'm pregnant? Complications, high risk, all of those things. And I realized that as a midwife, I had no clue. We're not trained in this stuff. We don't learn these things at university. We don't know about exercise. And I started realizing that the bits that I was taught and that I was repeating many, many times to my clients were quite inaccurate and useless when you have people who do want to train and stay active because the culture isn't really supportive of that. We tend to tell moms that they need to just, rest, don't do too much, don't lift too heavy, don't get your heart rate up, all of those things.
Mhm.
So I realized I didn't have much helpful advice to give. So I started fixing that. And I'm a bit of a geek. I did my master's in clinical research. So I love looking into the evidence and what we actually know rather than the cultural assumptions that we have, right? So, with that background, I started studying about pregnancy and postnatal movement, exercise, what we know now. I think we have so many women in research now, which is a very recent development. And so there's incredible research that's coming out. The Canadian research teams are incredible. And there's so much research now in pregnancy and movement and postnatal recovery. So I dove into that. I then did a course to become a coach for pregnancy and postnatal athleticism.
Oh, wow.
And then while I was at it, I also became a personal trainer because
Why not?
it just, it evolved. And in all of that, I started classes for pregnancy and postnatal moms, like exercise classes, um, with my sorry, with a couple of clients of mine who were midwife clients, but they were personal trainers. So together we decided to put something together, um, and that now turned into we opened our own gym. Which is a women-only gym, specifically designed for moms. We opened in January.
Amazing.
Now we have this incredible space with a play area for the kids inside the gym. So moms can train, their kids get to play. They watch their moms train, they watch them being strong. We've got pregnancy courses, postnatal programs, and then continuation classes because it's great and it's fun and it works.
Wow.
Um,
That is amazing. And you guys are in Southeast Hastings. So anybody listening to this in this area needs to, and I will leave all your links and addresses and whatever you send me. So down below.
Beautiful.
This is yeah. Gosh, this is great. Okay, so wonderful. So thank you for sharing everything. So tell me, do you see many type 1 diabetics? Do you see any diabetics like gestational or do you work with those people?
So I obviously in my career I've looked after a lot of moms with type 1. Not so much, I have to say. We see some gestational diabetes that comes up in our pregnancy classes sometimes. There's lots of conversations about, glucose tolerance tests
Yeah.
and those topics. I can't remember. I don't think we've ever had someone with type 1 coming to work out
Wow.
with us, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, they're
Because
probably
again,
too
it just goes
stressed.
into,
Yeah, they're too
yeah,
stressed to think about this. Okay, so but you do see high risk people. I'm sure there's lots of
yeah,
high risk people, and they're you're
yes.
often told to be more cautious, aren't they?
Hmm.
And so, how do you see the strength building, the movement? How do you see that helping them?
Immensely on all levels. So this idea that pregnancy is a time to be careful with movement, it's quite harmful because it's not based on research. It's not based on good science. It's an old school projection on women are fragile and they need to stay put when they're growing a baby. Um, we now know that actually it's inactivity that causes a lot of problems rather than being active, and there are no risks for the vast majority of moms. There are no risks in them exercising. There's just a whole host of benefits.
Mm.
We talked about, you started saying it's not the lack of knowledge that gets in the way of moms, right? It's their confidence. So I don't know if there's anything out there that helps us feel confident in our bodies the way exercise does. Um, it, Especially resistance training, like picking up some weight. Nothing wrong with cardio. Like it's totally fine to, get your heart rate up. It's safe. You can do that, and it's beneficial for you and your baby.
Oh wow. Okay.
But there's something about lifting weight, like there's more benefit that you get and your baby gets when you also lift weight.
Mm.
Um, it improves lots of different things from a physiological level. And when it comes to your confidence, like practicing a movement and getting better at a movement and being able to lift heavier weight and feel stronger when you go do your shopping, feel stronger as your bump grows, and you're able to stay away from some of the aches and pains that a lot of pregnant moms have, back,
Mm.
hips, those things. Like you get a lot less of that if you're strong and you're moving well and you know how to engage your core and all of those things that we practice in our fitness classes. So I
Great.
think as far as tapping into that confidence in your own self, that you can do hard things, right? That you can pick up heavy things, and you improve and you get better and you learn. Like I think that carries into motherhood in such a powerful way.
Mm.
So
Yeah, this is lovely. Okay, so tell me because I see a lot of pelvic girdle pain, at the front and a lot of
yes,
people. So just you see that also in your work.
absolutely. Yes, it's a very common thing. So it's pelvic girdle pain or the symphysis pubis dysfunction, SPD. Um, I'm like doing it with my hands.
Mhm.
The symphysis pubis. So pubic bone that gets a bit painful. So this is another thing, right? Where when I was trained as a midwife, I was taught that these things are normal things of pregnancy, and women just need to accept that this is going to happen and it will ease once their baby is born. Very wrong, very old school, but the amount of people that still say it, it's crazy. So it's not true. Like we can fix it, we can improve it, we can manage it. Now, there's different ways to approach it. So when with pelvic girdle pain, there's a couple of things that might be at play. It could be a misalignment in the pelvis. So seeing an osteopath or a chiropractor who specializes in this can be a godsend because they can actually feel what's out of balance and hands-on treatments to support that. So that's really important. And then there's exercises that we can do to engage the right muscles. So sometimes pelvic pain comes from a inactivity of certain muscles, especially around our inner thighs. Those
Mhm.
muscles can get a bit sleepy in pregnancy. They don't activate as much. And so that weakness, that lack of tension there can make things worse, specifically with like SPD pain,
Yeah.
where that sharp pubic bone pain. So there's also exercises that we do. So when we do our pregnancy class, we have a general workout for our moms, the ones who are struggling with pelvic pain. They will do a modified version, which includes exercises that help engage those muscles. And when that is the issue, the relief, it's almost instant. You do some of these exercises. I mean, your listeners can go and find loads of options on YouTube. They're out there, and
Yeah.
they can make such a difference. Um,
Amazing. Because
so,
most people with this pain, they all just be lying down, unable to walk, you know? So this is
oh, so one of my colleagues, I'll tell you this story. One of my colleagues, Jen, she, as I said, she was my midwife client. She's a personal trainer. I was her midwife for her third baby. So when she had her second baby, her pelvic pain was so bad, she ended up on crutches. And the only support that was offered to her was the NHS physio department um, through the maternity service. Now, love the NHS. I moved to this country because of the NHS. Like I know everyone's doing their absolute best,
yeah.
right? But it's really hard when you're working 12-hour shifts and have a ridiculous workload to read the most recent research and keep up to date and update the guidelines. Like it's just really hard, right? We know it takes about 17 years for research to translate into practice.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So the advice that Jen was given, and she still has the leaflet that was given to her at that time when she was on crutches, getting worse every week. They gave her this leaflet, which basically said, lie down and do nothing. And it said from 38 weeks, do nothing. And it's like written out. Now, this is a mom who's having her second child, who's got a toddler running around, who's a personal trainer, who's got an active life. Do nothing. Like we keep giggling about this. It's been years. Yeah, and it's just like, so what? Like, does the physio come to do my washing for me? Like, who? What does that look like? Do nothing. Because if I sit down and stand back up, that's a squat. So what? What does It just completely out of reality. Like so impractical.
Mm, mm.
Well, with pelvic pain, you're usually told if you get it once, you'll get it again. So when she got pregnant with a third baby, and I was her midwife, she was terrified that that would happen again. She wanted to keep on working. Um, so we stayed very on top of it. As soon as the early symptoms showed up, she went to a pelvic health physio. I also do massage. I've been doing massage for 20 years. That was my previous life, first career. So she got a lot of pregnancy massages from me where we worked deeply in her hips and legs. Um, and she had no pelvic pain whatsoever. Um, it was triggered a bit halfway through her pregnancy. We got on it. It resolved. She kept doing the things that helped. She worked as a fitness trainer all the way through her pregnancy. and was back working out 3 months after.
Ah, okay, interesting. But so she was a personal trainer and she still
Yes,
suffered with this. Wow, that is also interesting.
yes.
And so 3 months after the birth, is that what you recommend to get back into it?
No, much sooner if it's up to me.
Uh,
So we take moms into our postnatal program from about 3 weeks post-birth. Everyone is different.
uh-huh.
And there is absolutely no pressure. We started a new postnatal program yesterday. It's a 12-week program. We started one yesterday, and one of the moms there is 3.5 years post-birth, right?
Right.
So like everyone's different and everyone has their own time. It also really depends how your birth goes,
Yeah.
let's be honest. Huh?
Mm,
If you have a straightforward birth, if it's not your first baby and getting out of the house doesn't feel like you're gonna have to, go on a 12 day holiday. It's some moms jump in right away. If they've had a babies before, if they've had a pretty straightforward experience, they want to come in. They know they need their physical strength. And from 3, 4 weeks onwards, it's fine. It's fine with someone who knows what they're doing
uh-huh.
and takes it slow. So we start with breath work. We
Oh,
don't actually start moving until the second week,
oh, wow.
and it's very gradual. So first we relearn how to connect the core, the pelvic floor, how to brace. We bring all of those elements back in, and then little by little we add movement to it. So we're not straining
All right.
right away, right?
Wow,
It's not, if you
excellent.
come in at 3, 4 weeks post birth, you're not going to be, back squatting crazy weight on week one.
Yeah.
Um, but we do it very gradually. So 3, 4 weeks is a good time. There's lots of research telling us that the sooner we start doing breath work and core coordination work, the better we recover. If we're worried about our abdominals, the diastasis, the separation that can happen in our abdominals, pelvic floor, we know the speed of our healing, it's quicker in the early weeks. So
Mm.
if we can get in some intentional movement in the early weeks, it will help us much more than
Wow.
if we wait.
Very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. For me, healing was very long. It's I don't know if it was because I'm diabetic. Maybe it's got something to do with it. I feel like it takes a while to heal anything. But and what about those C-section mums? Is it still 3 weeks for those?
So C-section moms, it really depends how they're feeling.
Uh,
Usually they tend to wait at least the 4 or 5 weeks.
uh,
They do take a little bit longer. Some of them wait a few months.
I can imagine.
It just depends how they're feeling, right? But if there's no complications and they're okay getting out of the house, then being in an environment with other moms like them, with people who understand them, who hold space for them to just be real, like the benefits of that for their own physical, the confidence in themselves, like even just seeing yourself progress every week.
Mm.
When you're in that postnatal fog, right, where every day it's just like this crazy tunnel where you're just going from a feed to a nappy change to maybe I get a nap. No, I won't get a nap. You're exhausted. It just feels like, it's like Groundhog Day kind of vibe, and it feels so lonely and isolating. But just to have 1 hour a week that where you turn up and you progress every week,
Yeah.
you do something more every week, you see yourself getting stronger. Now
Mm.
you can jump again and you're not weeing yourself. Like, that's pretty cool. Right?
Wow, we need one of your centers all over the country, That's you need to start thinking like how to scale this. Yeah, this sounds amazing. Okay, so let's bring it back to high risk. So for those women
Yeah.
who are feeling quite monitored, these
Yes.
like, going into hospital every week for this, that, test or ultrasound, how can she stay connected to her body? How can, her and build her physical confidence? Is there any tips?
I think I would suggest an approach that brings balance. I think strength is really important because when we feel stronger physically, we just feel stronger
Mm,
within ourselves. So I think maintaining your fitness Or starting out, we can talk about this later, I'll first answer your question, but even starting out, if you've never worked out before, starting out in pregnancy, it's fine. So, so if we develop, a practice, showing up consistently to work on our strength, that really helps us feel better about ourselves, seeing that we can accomplish things. I also would say something like a pregnancy yoga class, something that still brings in movement, but it's got more of a gentle approach and a space where you can hear your own thoughts
Mm.
and you can connect with yourself a little bit. Um, I love fitness, but when you've got blasting music and you're sweating and you're doing hard things, it's not quite the same vibe, right? And the thoughts you're hearing is probably like, oh my God, this is really hard,
Yeah.
right? So that's not the same vibe. But I think for someone who's dealing with all the medicalization, the appointments, the busyness, having a place to feel strong and that they're not broken,
Yeah.
and having a place where they can just slow down and be gentle with themselves and move and create space in their body, feel more comfortable. But like I said, hear your own thoughts, connect with yourself. Like that's also really, really powerful. And if you can do both, I think it really supports you in feeling less lost
Mm.
when you're just being poked and prodded all the time and you just feel like, you're not really you anymore. It's
Yeah.
just gonna,
Just your
you become
numbers.
a little,
Yeah.
it's just got this feeling of like you're part of, you're in a factory and you're just getting put through that conveyor belt, right? I think just finding that time for you to feel good, it's just so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yes, this is exactly, yeah, love that. This is, yeah, for type ones, we constantly have to monitor our blood and we're judged by, what this high number, it's very stressful. Okay, so tell me, what about during the birth or going into the birth? What would you recommend for and again, it's going to be something more medicalized because more type ones are, facing the hospital birth rather than home birth. But what would make a big difference for them?
There is no way of training for birth. And I'm just gonna say it very clearly from the start because there's a lot of marketing out there. And if you're on Instagram and you're pregnant, I'm sure you're getting it. But there's a lot of marketing out there about training for birth, to do these exercises for an easy birth. And it's catchy and it works in some extent, but there is no way of training for birth. Like I wish. Oh God, do I wish I could just give you some exercises and you'd have the easiest, most straightforward birth. It
Mm.
doesn't work like that. There's way, way too many factors at play in a labor and birth to be able to train for it. There is no such thing. Plus, our bodies are more than capable of doing this. We don't need to train for it. We're built for it. It's, as you know, with the work you do, it's about creating the environment and the circumstances for moms to be able to birth and do what their bodies are designed to do. We don't need to train for that. The What we can do in preparing for birth when we're training, when we're thinking about staying active,
Mhm.
is again balancing things out. So when we do a lot of resistance work, when strength work, when we are even if we're running, if we're doing cardio, if we're doing high impact things, our pelvic floor has to get tighter than ever
Uh-huh.
to be able to support that pressure. So one thing I really encourage my clients to do is to work on relaxing the pelvic floor
All right.
and making sure that we're not just getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Right.
Now, I want to be clear, there is actually no research behind this
Ah,
idea of the pelvic floor being too tight,
yeah.
right? I try to be precise between opinions and evidence.
Right.
But as a midwife, I was trained um, to, to know that when you have moms who are ballet dancers, horse riders,
Mhm.
um, who use their pelvic floor a lot, and they have really strong pelvic floors, you can usually expect a longer labor, especially the pushing phase. Again, no evidence, but
Right.
I've worked
Anecdotes.
in labor rooms in 4 different countries. I've spoken to lots of midwives in different countries, and this is like midwives know that a tighter pelvic floor can cause some delays in birth.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
So what I want to make sure my clients do is that we find the softness in the pelvic floor as well. We
Right.
strengthen it, but we also need to be able to let it stretch because in birth it needs to stretch. So there's even here in the UK where we're quite up with the research and we do our best.
Mm.
Moms are still being told, make sure you do your squeezes, make sure you do your pelvic floor.
Oh, right. So you're saying to go against that, not to do that.
I'm not saying not to do that,
Right.
but this assumption that we're all a bit too loose and we need to do our squeezes, like that again, it's an old assumption. It's like, like
Mhm.
tell me a white dude in the 50s didn't come up with this. Like it's just not reality. In fact, what we know now is that a lot of women carry more tension in our pelvic floor than they should because we are modern women living crazy lives. And so we're always tight and hanging on for dear life.
Correct.
So it's really important that we connect in pregnancy with how to relax our pelvic floor. Because
Right.
during
Okay.
birth,
Everybody. Okay. Yeah. Tell
during
us.
birth, your pelvic floor has to open up completely.
Yeah.
Your pelvic floor has to let go completely, right? So an example could be, it's a muscle, right? It's a group of muscles, the pelvic floor. So let's imagine my arm becomes that, right? So if I'm always squeezing and doing exercises, and then I live a crazy life where I'm always tense, right? Like I'm up here all the time, right? Now I'm really strong here, but when I give birth, these muscles need to stretch all the way and let a baby through.
Right.
And if I've spent the whole time up here and I've never practiced it, these tissues don't know how to relax.
Mm.
So it makes sense to me that they'd have a harder time figuring it out in the moment. They'd take
Mhm.
longer, they'd need more help.
Mm.
So why not use pregnancy to learn the full range of motion? We do the squeezes, sure, but let's make sure we also stretch. Let's make sure we also learn
Ah,
how to
okay.
expand and let go. And
Right.
this is
Okay.
work you do with breath work
Ah,
and some
right.
stretches,
Okay, so
really
that's how
gentle
you would
stuff.
do it. Breath work and stretches. Right. Very
Yes.
interesting. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so um in your experience of 4 countries and seeing multiple different, but do you feel like high risk, like those that are labeled high risk, have they have different, mentally, physically, they have different outcomes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, they do. They do because their whole experience is different.
Yeah.
And I think that while the medicalization and the extra checks and all of that, it all comes from a good place of, wanting to keep you safe and make sure we spot problems early. But it does create an environment of anxiety,
Mhm.
of feeling like you're a ticking bomb walking around. You stop trusting your body, you stop trusting yourself. So all of these things lead to a pregnancy that feels harder, going into the birth with lots of extra checks, interference, which we know gets in the way of moms being able to tap into their instinct and just let it go, let themselves go in
Yeah.
labor.
Okay.
When we're using all the BP machines, when we are intervening in birth, we're taking away from mom's instinct, right? Now she's worried about the machines because everyone's worried about the machines, and she's not connected with herself. She's not
Yeah.
able to do what she needs to do.
Correct. So, what would you recommend to those women if you see them before birth or in the pregnancy on the run up? What would you recommend to those women experiencing high risk, high
I
fear?
think it's a very individualized approach, right? Because every high risk is such a silly label because it just puts this like danger signal out, but it could mean absolutely nothing and it's just a tick box that says high risk.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a serious situations where we do need to monitor very closely and we do need to make sure we're on top of things to keep everyone safe. So that label itself is pretty meaningless, um, because the way every pregnancy is managed is going to be different. So the way I approach it is a very individualized way.
Mhm.
Um, what's going on, what kind of appointments have you got, what suggestions are being made, what's true for you. I think it's important to have the information, and to have someone in your corner who has, and I mean, I'm biased. You could argue it doesn't really exist. We all have our biases, but someone who's willing to give you all of the options, right? Who's willing to go over all of the scenarios. We could do this, or we could also not do it. And if we don't do it, these are your options, right? I find the we're really lacking evidence-based information. I think a lot of moms, especially high-risk moms, oh, you should have an induction because of this. And then when you look into it, you're like, hang on, but induction in this case has never been shown to improve things. So why are we doing it?
Mhm.
And diabetes is a massive one for this. Like, there's lots of issues with how we're managing diabetes with very little evidence, if none, that we're improving anything.
Yeah. And
We're
actually,
not.
the evidence is very outdated. We all have these continuous glucose and we have perfect blood sugar most of the time, and still we're going with very outdated. Mm,
Especially my type 1 moms,
mm,
right? Like, gestational diabetes, like, you get hit with it in your third trimester.
yeah.
It is such a difficult time to figure out how to balance your blood sugars, how to eat right, how to, like, it's a lot to take on in the last 3 months of your pregnancy. But my type 1 moms, they're little wizards with their blood sugars. They've been managing this all along. They know exactly what they need to do. They are prepared. Their blood sugars have been controlled. Like, of course, pregnancy can throw things and you need to adjust your insulin levels. And sure, cool, let's have doctors and some monitoring that can help with that. But, like, what about all the moms that don't have the glucose tolerance test and their blood sugar has never been checked? Like, if we're being honest, you're going to be my safest one, right? You know exactly what your blood sugars are like, right? If you've got the continuous monitor, we know your blood sugar 24/7, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what my mom, who's never had a glucose tolerance test, is doing with her blood sugars. We're assuming, because she doesn't have any risk factors on the tick boxes. So we're assuming all of her blood sugars are fine. Well, in a case of a type 1 mom, even though her blood sugars might be fine and controlled and perfect, oh, but she's got the label.
Yeah.
So now it's just, again, it's not based on fact. So my moms should access information from someone who understands the research and presents them with facts of what we know so far,
Mhm.
right? The reality of it. And a lot of the times is the big nuance, it's a big gray, can't tell you what to do, because that's true.
Mhm.
That's what, we should be honest about that. So that's the first thing. And then for someone who's walking into, a pregnancy and birth that's very medicalized, um, do some work with a hypnobirthing practitioner, someone who can actually go through the options of and the practicalities of it, right? There's having the information so you can make the right choices for you, and you can choose what type of monitoring you want. You can choose whether an induction is right for you. You can choose whether actually I want a cesarean because that feels like the best option for me. Like, you can do all of that from a more rational point of view.
Mhm.
But then, and I guess more the theory of it, what your choices are, and then I think putting it into practice. So working with someone who can actually go through, okay, so we don't want it to feel medicalized. How do we achieve that? So that you get some tools to know how to manage, right? If you're going for an induction, doesn't have to be this like hyper medicalized experience. Like, it's gonna be medicalized. We're not gonna, that it is what it is. That's what you're signing up for.
Mhm.
But we can still pay attention to the sounds, the lights, and the type of monitoring you choose, and how quickly we move through the stages of induction, or whether you want to breather between steps.
Mhm.
Like, there's lots of things you can modify and adjust so that you take some control over the experience, that it's not all taken away from you,
Yeah.
that you feel like this is yours.
This is so good. You've got so much experience and you know it firsthand. So this is so lovely. So, before we wrap up, what's one small thing that you want to add, or you think that a woman, with this label should, do, or exercise, or how they should think, or anything that you want to add?
Ooh, that's juicy. I can go in lots of directions. Um, I think what comes to mind now is to look after yourself. And I mean, I'm biased.
Mm,
Get yourself a community where you can get your fitness in, where you can get stronger, feel stronger. Because what you're preparing for, when you're pregnant, it all feels like it's all about the birth. And you're preparing for the birth, and that's the main event. And you're not really thinking much about what happens after. You're getting your baby clothes and you're thinking about those things, but you're not thinking about you. You just think it's going to be you with a baby. But it's not that. You are going to be transformed massively by the experience itself and just by your life as a mom, once they actually hit. So I would say make sure that you set yourself up, not just thinking about birth, but thinking about your recovery and how to support yourself on the other side of that. Because you will need more support than you probably think. And so looking after yourself and trying to develop a community around you that will be there for you on the other side of birth is really, really powerful. I can really, really help us physically and mentally too.
definitely. This is wonderful. And I love that you've already said that, get back into exercise from about 3 weeks. This is really good information. I've never heard that before. I thought it was, minimum 6 weeks. So,
Yeah, the 6 week thing, again, it's not based on anything. Research tells us the sooner the better. And again, I'm not talking about go run a 5K 2 weeks after you give birth. In fact, I would probably say please don't. Um, but breath work, coordination, like rehab, right? If think about anyone who has knee surgery, what do? They if they know it's coming, they will do physio and strength training before the surgery to set themselves up for after. And after the surgery, they do rehab. They don't go running,
yeah.
they don't go squatting, they do rehab.
Yeah.
So while birth is not an injury or a surgery, well, it is surgery for about half people now, but
Mm.
regardless, like it's about the same process, right? So you want to get stronger to set yourself up for the event. And then after, rehab. As soon as you can, rehab.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Amazing information. I'm so glad. I'm so glad I'm hearing this. This is so lovely. Okay, so thank you so much to Elena. This has been such a great conversation. And if this resonated with you, especially my type 1 mums, take this as your reminder. Your body is not anything to fear. It's something to strengthen, support, and actually trust. So, movement, preparation, the right support around you. We need the community. That is what really matters. And if you'd like to connect with Elena, I will leave all her details below. Thank you for watching. Bye.